Hey, Michael. Very exciting here at Ignite Day One and wrapping up our demos for the day. I thought it would be really great to kind of talk through some of these really big announcements we've made throughout the day today in blog posts and at sessions around these new features and functions that we're continuing to bring in our investments in adaptive cloud. And specifically to talk about some of the ones that might just be new and interesting things for customers, but also things that I think folks are super excited about because several of them have, I think, been a long time coming. And the one that I think in particular has been that case is the ability to do Azure Migrate to migrate your workloads from VMware to Azure Local. We've also made some really amazing announcements on the public preview of SAN attached storage and the just expansion of capabilities around our GPU support for that NVIDIA RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell Server Edition. I think these are all like really exciting topics. And if you look across all these different really awesome areas of investments that we're making, it just shows that continued commitment that Microsoft has into this hybrid approach. But in looking through all of this, do you have any in particular that excite you or making you all fired up when you're testing them and validating them in your lab?
Yes. So networking is actually my passion. And in fact, the one demand that I've heard from customer feedback is around our gateway. So our gateway is a feature that we have just recently announced. And so let's talk about that, and then we'll dive into some more networking topics. But
Yeah.
our gateway is really looking at reducing the URL count that we have for Azure Local, which is pretty large. What was it you were telling me the other day? It's like 100 URLs, right?
There's between 100 and 200 depending on the services that you use.
Wow. Can you imagine going to change review board and presenting a list of 200 URLs for this simple service, right? Like,
no, that would not go over well.
yeah, that's not something that's going to go over well. So we wanted to reduce that count for customers. And so what we did is we came up with a solution that leverages Azure Front Door and builds an endpoint specific to each customer's subscription. So a customer will request an Art Gateway service that will be hosted by Microsoft, and it's going to dramatically reduce the URL count that is needed for Azure Local, because what we're going to do is we're going to leverage endpoints on the background for that. So we're dropping it down from 200 URLs to 29. And so these are initiator URLs that are necessary to make that connection to Art Gateway in the first place. But once it's done, then any subsequent service that we're using to expand the capabilities of Arc-enabled virtual machines, Arc-enabled Kubernetes, and Azure Local itself at the edge are now going through that single endpoint hosted on Azure Front Door in a highly available fashion and secured through Azure Front Door, but then leveraging the service endpoints on the back end of Azure so that we're privatizing that traffic once it's up there.
And I know many of the customers that I've been talking to and working with have been super excited about this. I've actually had several I've worked with that have implemented it throughout our preview cycle, and it has been a very positive response. But before we dig into some of these demos and showcase them, I think the other topic you might want to discuss is the work being done around network security groups.
Yeah, so this one is really dear to my heart because this is leveraging software-defined networking on Azure Local and previously on Windows Server software-defined data center. We have made a lot of inroads to deploying SDN to make it one of the easiest things. And if you haven't looked into it, it's pretty cool because it's now a clustered resource. It's no longer a VM-bound resource to deploy network controller, and it doesn't require all the architectural planning that you needed to deploy SDN in the past. The first feature it's bringing is probably one of the most widely used ones in Azure, and now we're bringing this concept exactly down to Azure Local, which feeds on my, my soapbox that Azure and Azure Local are uniting that management experience. NSGs, or network security groups, is a way for us to provide ACL rules, or classic access of inbound and outbound allow and deny rules on a logical network, a logical subnet, or a logical network interface. So you get to have that 5-tuple control that you're used to with NSGs in Azure, and that exact same experience applies to your VMs hosted on Azure Local. And so you can apply these, and we'll show this off, at the virtual switch layer and allow or deny traffic exactly the same you would, so that your network team is very happy with you as well as your security team.
Let's take a few seconds and showcase this before we've got to wrap up on this demo session.
All right, let's do that. So first, I'm going to pop in here. And so we're going to go to the cluster we have here on site, right? So we've got this Lenovo cluster here, and we've deployed out a 2-node cluster, but on top of there, we have deployed network security groups. Now we have a 5-tier application. This is very similar to what a customer would run, because this is a multi-tier application with databases, with web apps, and a web front end or a load balancing tier running all in Linux, Ubuntu 24.04 in this case, right? So you can see here I have 3 different NSGs. These NSGs are broken up into very similar fashion that you would design, right? So here you can see I've set the inbound rules on these, and so we're allowing basic inbound security rules where we're allowing Postgres SQL from Web App 1 and Web App 2 to talk to each other in a bidirectional way only on 5432, which is the Postgres SQL. We're allowing SSH inbound for 22, but then we're denying any other inbound connections to this. So we're really locking down this interface. And so you could see that I could apply this to a logical network, or in my case, I needed to be a little more flat in my networking design here at this very small edge location. So we've done a flat network, and we've decided to limit these ACL rules down to the logical network adapters. We could even go further into that and demonstrate this fully by just doing even just a simple test net connection. And so we're going to test a net connection from an outside jump workstation and go over port 443 to one of those web app servers, and you're going to see very quickly that it's in a deny state, just as we would expect. These rules are dynamic and allowed to be quickly updated at scale through ARM, through Bicep, through Terraform, CLI, or even the UI. So you can rapidly respond to these requests from your security team and lock these things down as you would expect to do in the real world.
So, I'm looking at all this and I'm thinking we're really starting to make good on that promise of this management experience for Azure Local is going to really emulate what you have from an Azure Arc experience and what an Azure cloud experience would look like, and kind of that same holistic approach. I think it's really exciting to see those investments that we're making. Additionally to that, where do you kind of land when it comes to any of the other networking designs that we have coming out? Are there any other demos you want to showcase? Anything else you want to show off in the last few moments we have for this demo session?
Yeah, so Art Gateway is kind of the other one that comes to play, right? And, unfortunately, Art Gateway is not a super fun thing to show off, but this has become, and it should become, a customer's de facto standard for deploying out their Azure local instances, right? So here I have my Sydney cluster, which is sitting in Australia East, all the way around the world, right? And so we're looking at this cluster, but what's unique about this cluster is if we were to dive in and look at the Arc enabled features of an individual node, you'll see that this node is actually connected using our gateway. So what happened is when I was bootstrapping these servers to prepare them for the cloud deployment, I simply ran one line of PowerShell to Arc enable them, and that one line of PowerShell contained the parameter for the Arc gateway resource, so that I was able to onboard to this resource ID this exact node, and then the other node that's in this cluster. So whether I did 1 or 16 nodes, that's taken care of. Now that means that all the traffic bound for Azure from this Azure local node and the other one in this cluster are all going to leverage that Arc Gateway resource on the Azure front door and essentially eliminate hundreds of URLs from my firewall list. To see that from a direct link, you can actually go to the node itself, and you can just run the AZ connected machine agent and show that case, right? And so if you ever want to confirm that you're running this, it's simply, if you see the Arc proxy is running, you're in fact using the Arc Gateway service. And so now I know without a doubt that I'm using the Arc Gateway service. Now, we will have a subsequent document that a friend of mine is publishing, Christian, who will explain exactly how the Azure local traffic is flowing, in addition to how your Arc-enabled virtual machines and your Arc-enabled Kubernetes that are hosted on Azure Local, how that traffic is respecting your Arc gateway, or how it would directly go to those Azure endpoints. So I recommend reading that as well, and we'll publish that link.
For sure. Well, hey, thanks so much, by the way, for taking a few minutes and talking a little bit about some of these new improvements to the Azure local experience. Again, so many announcements today at Ignite. Very exciting for folks to really get to dive into all of that. So looking forward to day 2 and to talk a little bit more about how we care and feed all of this once we've made these decisions to deploy these solutions.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.